Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller, and the FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. The ballots have been counted. We pretty much know where the primary sits except for one.
Right.
One race.
Too close to call.
Too close to call.
Sorrentino versus, yeah.
But the state's attorney's race,
State's
right?
attorney, yeah.
The state's attorney's race is the one that's outstanding, and it looks like we may have another week or so to go. That one's close, and we don't have our good friend Barry on to talk about, what the recount process would look like. I don't know what the margin
Trying to
of
get
error
him.
is.
Trying to get him.
That it needs to be. But, Jim, if we just kind of look at the primary season from a broad standpoint, state of Maryland has over 4 million registered voters, but in the primaries, only a fraction of that were voting.
Right. And that's not unusual.
No, that's not unusual. That's not unusual, and that kind of leads me to some things. But if we look at primaries specifically, we're not only looking at older voters, we're looking at more politically engaged voters, more partisan voters. So what happened in the primary election doesn't mean that that's going to tell us a lot about November, because there's one group that hasn't had a chance to come to the party yet, right? And that's the independents.
Well, and here's the other thing. What we've seen, not just in Maryland, but in a number of states, is these center-left or center-right people leaving the Republican or Democratic Party to be a registered independent, which problematically excludes them from the primary election in Maryland. So, that attrition, if you will, there is no answer for that.
Right.
And by the way, they're the voting group in Washington County that can throw an election one way or the other without even thinking about it.
Right. I think some of these elections are not going to move the needle relative to that. I think the election where the independents will really have their say is the county commissioner race, and we'll talk about that. But Jim, before we get there, do you feel that candidates will run two different campaigns? You run one for the primary, and you then run another one for the general election with the lay of the land the way that it is in Washington County? Or do we have politicians locally that are savvy enough to be able to do that?
I don't think with all due respect, and I would like to think, even though I disagree with some of those candidates vehemently, I would like to think that they have that trick, but I don't think they do.
Right. So let's give it this look. On the Democratic side, I'm just kind of looking at that pool of candidates. I didn't see them in the county much. I mean, there may be some spot appearances at some places in the county, but to win a countywide election, you're going to need to be in Clear Spring. You're going to need to win votes in Hancock, in Smithsburg, in Boonesboro, and Williamsport. And other than maybe one token visit here or there, I didn't see a lot of movement there. And based on how the primaries work and the low number of voters, you can stick to your base right in the core in the city of Hagerstown relative to your voters. But many of these candidates don't have name recognition outside of the core. So then the question becomes, what does fundraising like to get their message out? Do they, which of these candidates have, a volunteer base that's going to be willing to get out and beat the street in the county and be able to bring out some disaffected voters in regards to that. I just think that is the one race where independents will really move the needle relative to that race.
I think that will too.
The other races, I don't really see where
Well,
independents are
what
going to
about
move the
school
race
board?
more. School board, I just think that in school board, the independents are going to further what happened in the primary, right? The Democratic candidates moved to the top. And I just believe the independents are going to run with that
Of
theme.
the 3 school, I think it's 3 this year that we're electing. Of the 3 school board positions available,
Yeah.
in your mind, how many go to Democrats? How many?
I
go
think
to
they get all 3.
Really?
I think they get all 3.
Really?
I know that, on the Republican side, there's this idea that the teachers union is kind of the boogeyman. I know that, from an educator standpoint, there were a lot of people that were not pleased to see the superintendent go. And there were folks that were after his job, right, as soon as he got it, right?
Yes.
And
They didn't let up.
the last election cycle when we had the surprise election and the 3 Republicans came in and swept those positions, they kind of did what they believe their mandate was, is to move him out of position. I just don't think that was well received. And I just think that the numbers of the primary show that it wasn't well received. So the question becomes, if we're going to look at the school board race, is who on the Republican side understands that nuance and can kind of put together a campaign to move them back up the ladder so that independents their message will reach them and gravitate.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either. I think the school board loses 2 of 3.
So who's the one that gets in?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Put you on the. Oh, I wanted you on the record for that one.
Who do you think?
I don't think any of them get in.
Okay. I think maybe one of them will get in. But even if all of them, even if none of them get in, that still leaves and I know it's a nonpartisan race, but
Nonpartisan when both of the central committees are going to talk about who their ponies
Right.
are.
it's a nonpartisan race. But if you got 3 out of 7, you still don't have a majority.
Yeah. Well, starting at the top, Jim, and I know we jumped ahead, but looking at the gubernatorial race, we have a rematch.
We do.
What's changed?
Nothing, and nothing's going to change. There's no way Dan Cox wins. There's no way. He's too right for a lot of people. And I don't mean right as incorrect. I mean
Right.
too far to the right.
So here's the danger, right? So Cox is really at the top of the ticket for the state of Maryland, right?
Right.
He pretty much showed with the shellacking he took 4 years ago that he's, as our guy Larry Hogan would say, unelectable.
Right.
Could that cause an enthusiasm problem for Republicans? Or do you think it'll just create undervotes? Well, they'll skip that race and
I
pay
think it'll
attention to
create
other races.
undervotes. I think Wes Moore is going to benefit from the fact that Dan Cox is his opponent. And David Trone has proved now twice that money doesn't buy elections, but if you look at the campaign coffers, Wes Moore raised approximately $7 million in 2025, 3 times what Dan Cox has raised. So
You're burning money if you're throwing it after Cox.
yes, you are. In my view,
Yeah.
he was a former delegate. He's an attorney. He's a businessman. But again, I think a lot of people will find him too far right. Just my opinion.
Yeah. So you think, I mean, obviously, and we're of the same opinion that the gubernatorial race is over. I know that you and our good buddy Ron Bowers, you talked about this a bit last week. I believe that the Attorney General and the Comptroller's race, I think those are safely Democratic.
Yes, they are.
Democratic wins. So again, at the top of the ticket, you don't really have any races that Republicans can feel confident about. So that's why I'm thinking like some people may sit this one out.
Yep.
Because there's an enthusiasm. Like, what Republican candidates are you excited about? Like, even if you go to CD6, right? Robin Ficker.
Ficker? What? I mean, Robin's run how many times now?
Right, but Robin Ficker beats the Marine.
Robin Ficker has always been the also-ran candidate.
Right.
He wasn't a serious contender. Is he a
Right.
serious contender this year? No.
And you know, he's just. I mean, if you think about just his career, his antics as a heckler, like he's a character. But what does it say when the electorate chooses him?
You know, the problem that I have in this particular primary season with the representation across the state of Maryland of 16% of registered voters participating in the process, I'm not sure how much data we can glean or how many predictions we can make on any of this. I mean, you've got a number of things. You've got the fact that Democrats and Republicans are losing people to register as independents.
Right.
You've got the fact that this is a midterm election cycle, which is never the most popular thing in the world anyway. And then you've got 16% turnout versus the last midterm was like 22 or 24, if memory serves. I mean, I'm not sure how much we can really predict based on what we're
Well,
seeing.
Jim, you're not going to be able to predict because that's not a strong suit of yours in our 6 years together. So,
Right,
I mean, if
whatever.
you look at that. But I can predict, and so normally, traditionally, like where we are in the election cycle, this is not a good election cycle for Republicans. And if
Potentially.
historically speaking,
Well, but okay. But in
so
Washington,
2 years after President Trump's first term, he took a shellacking in the midterm.
Yes, he did.
So that is normally the history. The
Will he
incumbent,
take it? But yeah, well, that's right.
the incumbent party normally struggles.
President Obama took a shellacking.
Yes. So that trend is there. But to compound that in the state of Maryland, again, what Republican are you excited to go pull the trigger for?
Yep.
So there,
I'll get back to you on that.
yeah. So there we are, right? So like, where's the undervotes going to stop? Like,
Yep. I'm excited to pull the trigger for Brian Albert,
well, there you go.
Sheriff of Washington County.
Yeah, but and we can let's take a quick break, Jim, and talk about that. But like this is the second time. So Brian Albert is running against Junior McLeod,
Right.
Correct. I don't know anything about his campaign. Like he ran the last election cycle. I didn't really hear much from that campaign.
No, and I think that's Mr. McLeod's downfall is I'm not sure he's said a whole lot.
Right. I don't even know if he has the resources to get his name out there.
Conversely, Mr. Albert, Sheriff Albert, from all reviews that I've seen, has been very successful and a great successor to what was a arguably very popular sheriff that preceded him.
And he has the advantage of doing the job.
Right.
He's in the seat.
Right.
He's in the seat. And he won his primary race pretty handily.
Yes, he did.
So-
And all by the way, he has the respect of his staff and his resources for the large part.
Yeah, yeah. So Jim, let's hold off. Let's take a quick break and jump back into these races and look at it a little bit closer, all right?
Let's do it.
All right. Stay with us and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. Our favorite topic, our never-ending election cycle.
Election season.
It's always election season, Jim. But we talked a little bit around the periphery about CD6, but we didn't talk about the Trone-Delaney race. Now, if you want to go back into the archives early on, I basically said that Delaney was going to win this race. And the thing that we have found with Trone is that there is diminishing returns when it comes to his money. It does not matter how much money you pump into this race. He looked very desperate. I just know that there was a dust up between campaigns when he was sending out a flyer and producing commercials of alluding to something that Hillary Clinton had sent him, and he was trying to turn that into an endorsement. That just reeked of desperation.
Yeah.
And he was soundly beaten. Soundly beaten.
Yes, he was.
And this is 2 election cycles. I mean,
Right.
One, last year when he ran for Senate against Angela Also Brooks, that was more of a, urban area. And then he came back to rural Western Maryland where he was known. He had his fans.
Apparently not a lot.
Well, the thing, it's hard to tell because there's never a lot of polling out on these things. I think there was really only one independent poll that you would see. But if you looked in Frederick County and you gauged it by who was endorsing him, like he was being endorsed by, the Democratic candidates that were on the side of data centers. And, not to expand too far into Frederick politics, there was some punishment handed out to those Democratic candidates that were for data centers.
Yeah.
There, long-term incumbent Brad Young lost his seat, and that was kind of one of the main issues relative to that. But, Trone threw his resources at this thing, as he always does. And that forced Congresswoman Delaney to throw their personal resources into this thing.
Somebody got rich.
Yeah, but I'm just discouraged in regards to like how much money that is being thrown at these races from out of district candidates that drowned out the voices of the grassroots candidates that run in these elections. Is that good for our politics?
No, I don't think it is.
Right? I mean, they're loaning themselves tens of millions of dollars. When you have younger candidates with, different, fresh and different ideas, that their message is drowned out. Anyone that has a D next to their name was receiving tons of mail from these individuals. I mean, even for me, even watching television, the commercials, like their commercials were going back to back to back in regards to them attacking each other. So if anything, I know that, many of the electorate are just happy that they don't see those commercials anymore. So interesting thing there. And then, we talked a little bit already about Robin Thicke winning on the Republican side. He doesn't have a chance to win.
No, I don't think he does.
So
I mean, that would be the biggest upset ever.
Yeah.
In this part of the world, at least.
But again, I think that in the state of Maryland, this is a tough environment for Republicans to win in, because there's really no enthusiasm on your side of the ledger. So I just think that that's kind of a done deal. It'll be interesting to see if those two have a debate. Like, what would that look like?
A slaughter?
The one thing that I will give Congresswoman Delaney is, like, she is not the greatest, presenter.
Orator?
Retail politics is not her strong suit. That was more of a strong suit of Congressman Trone. But I think the thing that she did show Democrats is that she was willing to fight. Like, Trone forced her to fight. And I know that people got tired of the fight, and people didn't like two Democratic candidates beating up on each other.
But did Trone do a lot of retail politicking for this election cycle?
He was everywhere.
He was?
Maybe not in Washington County, but he was everywhere in Frederick County.
Okay.
Yeah, he was retail politicking. And you know, when you use your money resourcefully, there's a lot of ways that you can retail politic, right? So, you know, a little exercise for our audience is look at Democrats in Washington County that endorsed former Congressman Trone, and then go look at the FEC file, go look at the filings to see what Trone put in their coffers.
Yeah.
Just as a little experiment. But that's normally how that works.
Not a great ROI on that investment.
No, not at all. But again, as much money as he's thrown at it, like, did he get a great ROI when he won for the amount of money he's throwing at these things? Like, if you think about all these election cycles, Trone has probably spent over $100 million like running for office.
Well, didn't he spend 60 or 70 million in the Senate race?
I believe.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
so-
maybe I'm lowballing it. Maybe we're talking about 150 in regards to all the races that he's been involved in.
yeah, I would bet you're closer to 150, but I don't have the stats.
Yeah. But here's where all the energy is, and here's where, Jim, here's where the influence is going to come from the independents. And it's going to be the Washington County Commissioner's race.
Yes, it is.
And I
that's gonna
think
be a
in
good
this
race.
election cycle in our county, this is the most important. Why? They decide on roads, zoning, taxes, economic development, budget issues, water, sewer, parks. Like, these are huge issues. And I know that, you know, individuals spend a lot of time arguing about national politics, but the things that are coming down the pipe, and I know that as of the airing of this show, the current county commissioners voted on a moratorium in regards to the debate in regards to data centers.
Right.
Well, that's 12 months down the road, that conversation is coming right back,
Oh, absolutely it is.
right? So this is a huge election. So for voters out there that normally are worried about national things and what they might see on their favorite, cable news outlet, although we're void of a lot of media, this Washington County Commissioner's race is one that will hugely impact our lives in regards to the decisions that are making and the direction that our community is going to go in.
So who do you think on the Democratic side, if you were to, in order of preference, who are the top three?
Top three on the Democratic side?
Yeah.
I think the same way that the numbers came out.
So Laura, Dave, and Terry?
Lara, Dave. Now, I watched you and Ron last week. Remember Ron corrected you?
On Lara?
Yeah, remember it was Sarah, but with the L, Lara?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he corrected you on that.
All right.
So I believe it was Lara, Dave, and Terry. Right?
Terry Palin.
Yeah. I don't, there's nothing in that I see changing between those top three.
And how many of those do you think get elected?
I think one gets in.
Okay.
I think one gets in. If anyone gets in, it's Lara, because her campaign is fresh and different, and
that's going to replace the seat that's currently held by Neil Parrott on a temporary basis that was vacated by a resignation earlier this year.
well, not in particular, because there's 5 seats open, right? So if we go from the top vote getter down, so who are our 5 on the Republican side?
Randy
Yep.
Leatherman, Dan Young, Charles
Yep.
Burkett, Jeff Klein, John Barr,
Yeah.
in that order.
Yeah. So there's a sign there to me, right? If you're the county commissioner president and you come in last of the Republicans, that's a huge warning sign.
Unless you're going to make up for it with the independents.
Yes, that is possible. That is very possible.
Again, I don't think you can underestimate the impact that independents are going to have on this general election.
Yeah, but the problem is normally you get an advantage when you're sitting in the seat. The problem for President Barr is, like, I don't think he has an advantage sitting in the seat right now because of all the issues that are coming at the county commissioners that are just unresolved, right?
Not to mention the personal attacks that have been.
Right. Like, I think those things damage him. And like, there's some things that haven't had an answer for. Whether they're true or not, there hasn't been an answer. Like, for instance, part of the attacks on him is that his businesses are personally benefiting from decisions that are made. Is that true? Is that untrue? Number one, there's no Herald Mail that's doing any investigative reporting to kind of report out to give people that. So the only thing that you have is the noisy folks that are making this noise on that.
But there was a former commissioner who was starting a distillery, right?
Yes.
And it didn't take long for someone to open an ethics investigation. I don't believe the Herald Mail had anything to do with that at that point.
Well, but that was different though because there was a grant that
I
he
understand
went after
that.
that opened that door up.
I understand that, but don't you think that if there was, with all the allegations that have been made against
Right.
him, largely by one person,
Right.
don't you think if there was any there, somebody would open an ethics investigation?
I would, but I think that for voters though,
Right.
the only noise that is out there is allegations, right? There's nothing to combat that. Now, obviously, it's not the county's responsibility to combat one individual. So I don't know, during this season of the campaign, will he be more vocal in talking about his business dealings, or will he just run a traditional campaign? And the other thing that I think that makes President Barr vulnerable is he's been rejected by Republican voters before when he ran as an independent.
But is that because of who he is, or just because he switched parties and somebody held that against him?
But again, but in this environment, is that still out there?
Could be.
Right.
You never know. So, for the record, I think we're going to lose 2 Republicans.
I don't think so.
I think that Lara
Yeah, there you go. Good job.
and Dave Williams
You think both of them get in?
get in. I wouldn't care to guess who they would replace. I think Jeff Klein stays. That's as far as I'll go on that one.
You don't want to go all the way?
No, I think Jeff Klein stays.
Yeah, well, but
With all due
again,
respect, and I like this candidate, and I would consider voting for this candidate. I may vote for this candidate. I think Charlie Burkett loses.
yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. Of all the races, this is the race where the surprise comes in, right? This is the race where the surprise comes in because this is the race where independents are really going to move the needle. Because the taking away of public comment, the constant barrages, the questions that are being asked, the detention facility, like there's just so many items out there. And then, we still have this water issue that still needs to be addressed by the city and the county.
Right.
Right.
And it's not.
So voters need to decide, like, who do you want sitting in those seats being a part of negotiations and opening up that to solve this problem for us long term before it becomes critical mass. So, but that's all I got for you right there, Jim. Let's take another break and come back, and we can talk a little bit about data centers and all the other good stuff that we got on top of it.
Perfect.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. One of the hot topics that is that is really encompassing every community around us, right?
Well, it's nationwide.
It is a nationwide. But if we're looking locally, and folks, we're talking about data centers, and Frederick County is battling with this right now, and candidates that were for data centers took a hit in an election there. Long-term incumbent Brad Young lost an election there, and the interesting connection is that David Trone was supporting the data center candidates. So like there was a hit that was taken there. Right across the bridge in West Virginia, there's a data center coming there.
Yep.
But in thinking about it in regards to data centers, whenever we ask ChatGPT a question, or watch Netflix, or store family photos, or
Use
information
AI.
on the cloud, we're using AI, right? It is a part of our daily lives, and even people that are against it are using it. Right. Personally, I have to be careful using AI. Like I made a AI image of my younger daughter when she was making her college announcement and she was going to nationals, and my older daughter was like, our generation doesn't like AI. Please stop using that. You're going to destroy the planet. So when I vacation with my daughter soon, I'm going to have to be careful with my usage because she is adamant that AI is not it.
Okay. But the stats show significant growth over the last 5 years. Right now, there are approximately 4,400 to 4,800 operational data centers nationwide.
Yes.
There are more than 1,500 projects in the works that are planned nationally right now.
Yes.
And the largest concentration of them is, guess where? Northern Virginia.
Northern Virginia.
Right.
Yes.
So, it's not a big jump to think that could spread into Maryland. And if you're spreading into Maryland, do you want to do that near the city where the cost is going to be significantly higher than if you build in Frederick County or Washington County or even Allegheny County? I mean, the transmission lines are certainly there with the fiber that we have in place.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that.
It is. And Washington County is attractive, right?
It is.
We have a lot of land.
So let me ask you this, though. This moratorium that was voted on,
Yes.
was that smart planning? Was it unnecessary caution, or was it just plain politics? We don't want to deal with this till after the election.
I think it's politics.
Yeah, I do too.
Because if you're sitting in that seat and you're running for re-election,
It's bad enough you've got the detention center hanging over your head.
you have the detention center hanging over your head. There's no public comment, and you look at Frederick County and what happened to the politicians that supported it. Then you said, "Now let's kick it. Let's kick it down the road." On the moratorium, there was a 4-1 vote, and I believe the only commissioner that was for is the one that's not running again, Neil Parrott. Right. But he could go on the record because he had nothing to lose. But everyone else was very, more than happy now. More than happy. And of that 4, obviously Randy Wagner's not running again.
Right.
But of the other 3, right, that they're kicking that can down the road. So just from a political standpoint, they won't really have that hanging over their head. But the question for voters are, who do you want sitting in that seat starting to make those decisions, for 2028, basically.
Right. Maryland has approximately 53 operational data centers today.
Yeah.
So we're already well into it. If you think about it, clearly, again, Northern Virginia is the leader, but if you want to call it leading. But one of the things that's at issue here that we talked about earlier is this whole notion of water usage. I mean, we've got a water problem in Washington County, period.
Yeah.
It's something that has not been addressed, needs to be addressed by the county and the city jointly. And these things apparently use a lot of water.
Yes. Yes. Now, I haven't dug in and done my research, but I believe NVIDIA, I believe they have a chip that's coming online that's to produce less heat, which would reduce the water demand.
Okay.
In regards to that, I know that would be something that's valuable, but water is, only one facet of the issues, right?
Well, the other significant one is electricity.
Right, and noise.
Right.
But also is, land use, especially in a county like ours.
Right.
That's rich with farmland.
Right.
And things of that
Do we
nature.
want to pave over Washington County
Right,
with data centers?
right. I mean, we've already had issues with losing farmland to warehouses.
Right.
Right.
And solar.
Right. So it's
Installations.
like, obviously we have to, we have to grow and modernize with the times, but are we willing to change the landscape of this county and all the richness that it offers? And, the question becomes also is like, do the dollars really make sense from the standpoint of many of these billion-dollar facilities have less than 100 employees?
Yep.
Like, are we really getting the bang for the buck for the demands that you're putting on infrastructure? Because these data centers are not job creators.
No, they're not. Well, they are initially when they're being built.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they're not job creators at all.
Right. So, like for instance, I believe the comment that Neil Parrott had at the council meeting is that, he was for it because Maryland needs to show that they're open for business. All business isn't good business.
Right.
Right. And like, what are you showing
And
you
what does
open
this mean?
for? Temporary jobs?
Yeah. And who's gonna own these data centers? I mean, you're not gonna have a mom and pop Joe and Jones data center, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be Microsoft. It's going to be Google. It's going to be some big company that is just looking for the cheapest place to build.
Yeah.
And they're not going to give back much, if anything, to the community.
Yeah.
This is not a Mack truck or a Volvo who's going to become ingrained, in my opinion, who's going to become ingrained in this community and be a part of its success. They're going to build cheap.
Yeah.
And maintain cheap as long as they can, in my view.
And this study, there's a study happening while this moratorium is happening, right?
Right.
Looking at electricity, water, noise, land use, economic impact, and employment. I mean, the numbers already bear out that the employment is not there relative to data centers, right? And, I know there's a lot of focus on electricity and water, but also, like land use and employment, like is that an effective use of land, right, for what you're going to get in economic activity?
Well, and some of the reports that I've read have suggested that it is going to be such a drain on electricity that Reggie and Jim's electric bills are going to go up because of significantly increased demand.
Which those bills have already been going up.
Yes, they have.
Significantly. So that's going to be interesting. And I, I wonder if we look back after this election cycle, like I know there's a moratorium, but I just wonder, are there candidates that's still going to make this an issue that they're talking about in regards to trying to get out in front and talk about, how they would intend to handle the conversation when it comes up when they're in office?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year with whoever is in office in terms of that moratorium.
Yeah. So, Jim, here's a question I have for you. If Amazon announced tomorrow that they wanted to invest $1 billion in Washington County, would you
Build a
support
data
it?
center?
Yeah, would you support it?
No. No, for all the reasons.
You don't think the juice is worth the squeeze?
I don't think it is. I think maybe short term it is. But again, if you look at where we are geographically, not all of those jobs are even going to be jobs for Marylanders.
Right.
I mean, you go 5 minutes one way, you're in West Virginia. You go 5 minutes the other way, you're in Pennsylvania. So let one of those guys have the data centers, and we'll just give the employees, we'll give you half the employees that you need, and you won't eat up our resources.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. And again, especially in a rural area.
I know that communities have fought this. Some have fought this successfully. I just wonder, though, how long can you fight it? Is it inevitable?
Well,
because you can fight it on one hand, right? And I know some candidates are willing to fight it on one hand, but on the other hand, as they're running their campaigns with, not a lot of dollars, they're utilizing AI to run their political campaigns.
yes, they are.
Right? So it's kind of like, I need it, I want it, but not in my backyard.
Yeah. But here's the other thing we have to be cognizant of, and the other reason that I don't support building a whole bunch of these in Washington County, and that is the fact that technology seems to miniaturize itself more and more every day.
Right.
If you think about what a laptop computer looks like when they first came out, I had
Right.
one called a K Pro. It was the size of a suitcase.
How heavy was that thing? Like 20 pounds?
20, 25 pounds,
Yeah.
right? You couldn't use it as a carry-on. It was that big.
And you and I have, these are bigger laptops.
These are
than we
bigger,
have,
right.
But my office laptop is
Right, exactly.
significantly smaller.
Exactly.
Right?
So the point is, it used to be the first computer, called the ENIAC, by the way, filled a whole room, right? The IBM 3270s, 3260s, or whatever they were called, filled a whole room. Now we've got 10 times the processing power in this. So over time, because these data centers are there for processing and storage,
Yep.
both of which still take up a fairly significant footprint. What happens when
But there's an
paradigm on that changes?
there's an economic incentive, and that's the beautiful thing of capitalism, right? There's an economic incentive for the companies that can help solve this problem,
Right.
right?
We have not seen significant, we used to, when we started in the microcomputers, we had every year or so they'd introduce a new processor that was exponentially faster
Yeah.
than the last. We've not seen that. So I think the paradigm needs to shift on the hardware piece of this. And when it does that make that 100,000 square foot data center be able to be run in 10,000 square
Right.
feet? I don't know. But if it does,
But the companies that can solve that problem
we'll make bank.
will make bank,
But
as they should.
But my point is, then it just becomes another empty building in Washington County.
Right.
Just like the Citicorp building.
Right.
And just like so many others. Lowe's left a string of them
Right.
across the county. Martin's left a string of them
So
across
the question
county.
becomes, can communities like ours keep data centers at bay until we can get to those solutions?
Yeah. And it's always going to be changing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's always risk there. But that's why I think the juice is definitely not worth the squeeze.
Gotcha. Got you on the record for that. All right, Jim, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about electric vehicles, because you have one now, right, Jim?
I do not.
All right, fair enough. Stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. We've made an executive decision to kind of pivot a little bit. No talk about EV today. But Jim, this election season, I know it's a midterm election, and midterm elections don't get the energy that a presidential cycle does. But for our community, this is a huge election. There are major issues online. There are transparency issues that our community has started to complain about. And we're doing this, and this is about the third or fourth election cycle that we're in, where we don't have a robust media presence to cover these things. So the information that voters get is limited. What are some of the things that you would like to see out of this election cycle?
I would like to see more engagement. I would like to see these candidates who, in some cases, are spending a fair amount of money, depending on the office. If you spend, we know what David Trone spends, right?
Right.
But if you're a county commissioner and you spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that's a fair amount of money. At least it would be in my world. I would like to see these candidates develop better ideas of how to reach out to the voters and help educate them about what they stand for.
Right.
My concern always, since the invention of social media, is that we hear from everybody but the one we need to hear from, and that's the candidate. We hear all of these opinions and thoughts, and I hate this guy, or I love this woman, or
Right.
This person's a thief, or this person's the best thing since canned beer and sliced bread.
Canned beer, sliced bread.
I'd like to see that engagement. I'd like to see more organizations like the League of Women Voters, like the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, step up and do candidate forums or candidate debates.
Yeah.
I think that what they do is great. I know that
But do we have debates anymore? We have forums.
we have forums, yeah, and the oftentimes the questions are developed by a very small subset of people that don't necessarily represent, or they're heavily. The chamber, as you would expect, they're going to ask the candidates about business,
Right.
right? Because that's what their deal is. The League of Women Voters may have their particular element. We need to have a more generic forum, debate, whatever you want to call it, and we should let it be a little drop-down, drag-out. I don't want to see people throwing punches.
That means less forums and more debates, right? We don't have debates, and my struggle is we don't have news sources that are vetting candidates.
And we're not going to.
And that is really a...
Vetting a candidate is sending them out a form, letting them fill it out, and then publishing whatever they
and that's a huge problem for me, right? Because I live in a world where, through employment and otherwise, the things that you say that you do are vetted. I've served on foundations and boards that vet have a higher standard of vetting than we do with politicians running for office.
Absolutely.
And I'm disappointed in that, and I understand where, our traditional media sources don't have the resources to vet. And I seen one, and I don't want to name the source, but one of the media, the local grassroots media outlets basically said that, they're often given tips in regards to, this candidate did this, but they didn't feel that they had the staffing to kind of vet everyone, so they just leave that stuff alone and
Right.
don't do any investigative reporting. Well, but that's what debates and forums are for. Like, if there are candidates out there that are saying that they run a business, and you go to SDAT and you see that business was forfeited 5 or 6 years ago, then that candidate needs to be asked a question or two, right? Let's get to the bottom of it. You have on your resume right now that you run this business. Please explain to us that within the state of Maryland, it says that business has been forfeited. Please explain to the voters what you mean when you say you run this business.
Yeah.
And if you can't articulate that in a manner that makes sense, then why would voters trust you? But these things get glossed over, so people put whatever they want to on their resumes.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And
then there's some of them that are running organizations, but the organizations aren't even functional.
No.
Right, because some of these organizations are functional in name only, but they are not functional organizations that are serving the people relative to their mission.
Right.
But there's no vetting of any of that. So candidates can really say what they want to, and no one is taken and held to account. And that's a struggle, because then elections become popularity contests.
Right.
right? Who's most popular, or whose message is gravitating, even if their resume doesn't match up to who they say that they are. And I just think that that's dangerous, because we've seen that over election cycles, especially within the city limits. And we have some big issues on the table that need to be solved, and there's going to need to be collaboration of people that, number one, know how to collaborate.
Right, exactly. And that is one of the things I'd like to see. I would like to hear from these candidates. If you're a candidate for, and I know the city elections aren't this year, but if you're a candidate for county commissioner, how are you going to deal with how are you going to interface with the city government? How are you going to interface with the state government? What specific things are you going to do to make those relationships a priority and make them more beneficial for the citizens of Washington County?
Right.
How are you going to deal with rising housing costs? How are you going to deal with property taxes and local taxes? How
But
are you
it's
going to deal
one
with...
thing to have good ideas, Jim. My problem is that in our ChatGPT society, everybody can craft a statement that sounds good.
Yeah.
But how does that match up with your resume?
Well, but here's the problem. Yes, I agree with you to an extent, but here's the other reality. If you're using ChatGPT, unless you're sitting there in the debate on ChatGPT, your knowledge is about this long and about this thick.
Right,
So
but
if you get behind that, tell me how. Yes.
But you have to have forums or debates. I like a debate better, right? Because a candidate can hold another candidate accountable
exactly right.
in a debate.
That's exactly
as opposed to these fluff broad questions where you can come in with your scripted things, and then if you are a gifted orator, then you can
let me break out talking point 100.
You can say a lot of words and say a whole bunch of nothing, right? Relative to that. But you can say, that you're going to do this overseeing this budget. But if you're not even managing a budget in your own personal life, like, I'm really not buying that. Like, if you're not solvent personally, how am I to expect you to run multi-million-dollar budgets in government and make decisions relative to, school board and how things are allocated? Elections have become about showmanship, and more candidates see a showman win and they go, you know what, I can do that. But the resume doesn't match what they're saying. Right. And that's the problem. And there's no vetting of these candidates, and there's not enough.
And we get so focused on hating the opponent or hating the other side that's all we get done.
Right.
And we vote on people because they hate the same people we do, not because they can do anything good for us.
Washington County is a unique county where candidates that hate the other side, you're not going to get anything done. Right?
There are a lot of those.
If you're a Republican here, you're going to have to work with Democrats downstate to get things done.
Yes, you are.
Right? If you're a Democrat and you're running for statewide office, you got to come home and work with Republicans, because this is still a majority Republican county.
It is.
So if you can't show the ability that you can work across both sides,
you're done. But you'll win.
You might win, but work is really not going to get done.
That's right.
You'll be the photo op administrations where you're at the ribbon cuttings all the time.
And how many of those have we had?
We've had a lot, and we still have plenty.
Yes, we do.
So, off my soapbox on that one.
All right.
Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on X, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But more importantly, join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.